Dedicated to Eastern and Southern Kentucky, this is WYNT Mountain News at 11.
Good evening, I'm Steve Hensley. Protests have restarted in the nation's capital, where President Trump is calling for a stronger clampdown from state governors. Demonstrations and riots were sparked nationwide over the police-involved death of George Floyd in Minneapolis last week. CBS's Natalie Brand is in Washington with the latest.
In a Rose Garden address, the president called on state governors to crack down on nationwide demonstrations after some have turned violent.
I have strongly recommended to every governor to deploy the National Guard in sufficient numbers that we dominate the streets. If a city or state refuses to take the actions that are necessary to defend the life and property of their residents, then I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them.
Afterwards, President Trump visited the nearby historic St. John's Church. Presidents dating back to James Madison have attended services there. Chaos ensued outside the White House gates moments before the statement, with tear gas fired at crowds gathered there. Washington, D.C. is one of more than 40 cities where curfew orders are in effect to try and stop more looting and vandalism. The thousands of peaceful demonstrators don't want violence to overshadow their calls for change. In Minneapolis, George Floyd's family visited the growing memorial to honor his memory. His brother called for peaceful protests.
What are y'all doing? Y'all doing nothing, because that's not going to bring my brother back at all.
The Hennepin County Medical Examiner has ruled Floyd's death a homicide, saying the cause was cardiac arrest. But an independent autopsy commissioned by Floyd's family came to a different conclusion.
The cause of death, in my opinion, is asphyxia due to compression of the neck.
Derek Chauvin, the former police officer, is charged with third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter. He's due to appear in court next Monday. George Floyd will be buried the next day in his hometown of Houston, Texas. Natalie Brand, CBS News, Washington.
A memorial for Floyd has been scheduled to be held on Thursday in Minneapolis. Well, Louisville Metro Police Chief Steve Conrad announced last month that he would retire at the end of June, but after a deadly shooting overnight following days of protests, the mayor said he had to go now. Shelby Smithson has the latest from Louisville.
Shots fired. Building on the northwest side.
A chaotic scene early Monday morning. You can see people scatter in the real-time crime center video.
We took fire from the small building. We have people barricaded inside that building.
And hear moves made by Louisville Metro police officers in the police radio transmissions. Both were released Monday, but the point of view you won't see is from a body-worn camera.
As I learned about some of the details about what happened last night, I learned that the body cameras of the officers present were not activated. This type of institutional failure will not be tolerated.
Mayor Fisher and Acting Chief of Police Rob Schroeder say it was that failure that leaves lingering questions about what exactly happened, specifically like who actually shot David McAtee.
We do not know if it was related to a separate incident, if it was due to the shots fired by our officers and the National Guardsmen and soldiers that accompanied them.
What they do know is their community is demanding answers, taking to the streets again Monday night for protests with yet another name to chant.
All I could do is express the deepness of sorrow that I have and my commitment to get to the truth again.
That was Shelby Smithson reporting. Chief Schroeder says the two LMPD officers, Katie Cruz and Austin Allen, have been placed on administrative leave. Meanwhile, protests continue in Louisville tonight. Earlier, they seemed peaceful, but in the last hour, our sister station Wave is reporting they are turning violent again. In fact, flames have been seen coming from the roof of Dino's, which is just next to the scene of last night's deadly police-involved shooting. Of course, we'll keep an eye on that out of Louisville. Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron is responding tonight to the death of David McAtee, calling it a, quote, incredibly difficult and heartbreaking day for the black community. Cameron called for a stop to violence while investigators seek answers in McAtee's death. He went on to say, quote, you have my word, the truth will be known and the rule of law upheld. A Louisville Metro officer seen on camera firing pepper balls at a news reporter and photographer has been reassigned until an investigation is complete. The officer's name has not been released. The pepper balls were fired directly at a Wave 3 news crew who were reporting on the protests Friday night. Wave's general manager said in a statement, quote, there is simply no justification for the Louisville police to wantonly open fire on any journalists under any circumstances, end quote. A bit of good news out of Louisville. As some of the protests began to turn violent over the weekend, protester Darren Lee was trying to make his way home when he spotted an officer who was separated from his squad. Lee saw that he seemed lost and nervous as a crowd gathered around the man, so Lee and several other strangers linked arms, protecting the officer from the crowd.
I think he learned at that point not all protesters or not all black people are bad people. We don't all have a hate for the police. We just want to see change. We just want to see justice.
The group was able to escort the officer unharmed back to his squad. Lee said the officer thanked them for their efforts. As the national spotlight shines on those violent protests in Louisville and across the country, groups gathered peacefully here in eastern Kentucky to join the cause. WIMT's Will Puckett was in Paintsville and has more.
Paintsville Mayor Bill Mike Runyon's message from the start was simple.
It's just one of those things that you've got to allow people to protest peacefully, and that's the key word, is peacefully. And as long as they do that, then I'm fine with it.
Oh God, we ask that you would... Monday night, a group of more than 50 people gathered to march in downtown Paintsville.
I didn't feel like I could sit here and not do anything. This country is facing a really big problem where black people are constantly being targeted by the police and killed. Black people make up 24% of police murders, but only 13% of the population, and clearly something is wrong.
Andre Faria is the event organizer. He says that bringing Eastern Kentuckians together to fight against racial injustice is important to show they are listening too.
Black Lives Matter! Here in Eastern Kentucky, there's a stereotype that everyone's racist and everyone doesn't care. And I really think it's important that we show that we do care and that everywhere around this country people are caring and people are listening to black voices.
No peace! No peace! Voices like that of Katie Wells, who joined the march Monday evening carrying a sign that reads, "You don't know my story."
A lot of the stuff I've been seeing online is people just trying to pretend that they know the black experience and gaslight the black experience. But it's you can't understand.
Don't shoot! Don't shoot! Wells hope that marches like Monday's and ones happening peacefully across the country help to show there's work that still needs to be done.
You don't want to be angry, but you're tired of just being quiet and being silent about it and pretending like it doesn't bother you. So sometimes you just have to speak up. And so I decided this is probably the best way.
I can't breathe! I can't breathe! Passing along stories to those who will listen and showing that if there's cooperation from both sides, actions like this can get the message across. In Paintsville, Will Puckett, WIMT Mountain News.
Meanwhile, in Pikeville, people gathered at the city park for a peaceful rally for grief, empowerment, and anti-racist transformation. Many people spoke, from public officials to chaplains, therapists, and African Americans in the community. The night ended with people walking from Hambly Boulevard, chanting Black Lives Matter. WIMT's Emily Bennett continues our coverage.
We're going to educate people the best way we can. We're going to let people know what's the meaning of Black Lives Matter. We're going to let them know who Breonna Taylor was out of Louisville, and George Floyd in their lives and what they did.
Why was George Floyd killed? Let me show you. $20. Racism is a product of a system to get you to live for this and worship this.
Black lives do matter, but it really starts with white people helping to talk to their racist friends, the racist family, that it's time for a change. That's all we're here for. It's time for a change.
All these pain that we're going through, my brothers and sisters that are going through, y'all have a responsibility to stand up for them. So do what you can do best. Raise your voice.
Pikeville, who are you?
What if the next headline about Appalachia was that Appalachia is leading the country in anti-racist work? That we are committed to transforming our communities, and that we are the first place that took action, and we took action with the most urgency.
This is a small town, and you figure it'll be the most racist, but the police has not bothered me, so I have nothing against the police down here. This is awesome. I'm trying to keep from crying.
Black Lives Matter!
What's my name? What's my name?
No justice!
No peace!
No justice!
No peace!
Emily Bennett there getting that footage for us. The event lasted about 2 hours and was peaceful the entire time.